Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. I don't like DLC content. I know, right? Very bold stance there. Really paving the wave of internet discussion by expressing such a rare, controversial opinion. But in all seriousness, for better or for worse, DLC as a form of monetization has pretty much been accepted as a viable means of expanding your monetary options as a video game publisher. And even I can admit there can be scenarios where I can see the benefits of post-launch content bringing more life to an already existing game. For example, as someone that appreciates the FGC scene, DLC and season passes are essentially the key ingredient for both justifying the time and resources from the developers to keep supporting the game by keeping the servers up and balancing out the roster, as well as releasing new characters that end up refreshing the lineup of characters and opening up opportunities for new metas, alongside the already existing roster that went through their own fair share of patches. While I do still find it incredibly annoying that so many fighting games are released with characters essentially locked behind a paywall, even when they were obviously already finished even before they announced the DLC content, in terms of the long-term viability, I can see the value of DLC. However, what I absolutely do not see the value is not fucking owning the thing I buy. Make sure to look into Stop Killing Games. You see, by far the biggest problem that I have with DLC content is that if you're a physical media collector, like me, then obviously without counting the few games that either have some kind of online requirement or doesn't have the full game data on the disc, which unfortunately is an issue, but without counting these obvious bad apples, the primary benefit of buying a physical copy over a digital copy is the fact that the disc comes shipped with the full game build that you can then install into your console regardless if you're connected to the internet or not. So if you're in a situation where you either don't have the internet or the PS servers are off, you can still play your games as long as you have the disc copy. Now of course you will miss out on updates, but unless we're talking about extreme cases like Cyberpunk 2077, you will probably still have a pretty reasonable build that will allow you to play the game from beginning to end. However, DLC content is a different story. You absolutely need the internet in order to purchase it, in order to download it, and in order to authenticate it, which means that 99% of DLC content out there is doomed to die. And to show you just how bad the situation can be, Dragon Ball FighterZ, a game that I absolutely love evident by the amount of content on my second channel, that game has a total of 44 characters, 20 of them being DLC characters. That means that almost half of the roster is not owned by you. And what makes this even dumber is the fact that I believe last year, Bandai Namco actually released a PS5 copy of Dragon Ball FighterZ, which I'm not sure if they even really needed to do that given how the PS4 build already has pretty hefty enhancements when you play it on the PS5, but I still bought it anyway because I did have a more up-to-date build with patches that fall more in line with the balance that I'm used to. It technically did have faster loading screens, even if it's somewhat marginal. And when it comes to the original PS4 copy, if you play the build that comes shipped in the disc, aside from having an older, outdated build, it also doesn't have some of the graphical enhancements that was patched in later when the PS5 came out. So I was more than willing to buy this again. However, one thing that really set me off was the fact that they didn't even bother to sell a bundled version of the game that comes with all the DLC content. You're literally just buying the base game again. Like, bro, this game came out like 6 years prior. It has been 2 years since you even released any form of DLC. Why not just include the DLC content already? Like, who are you trying to milk at this point? Come on, just include the fucking DLC content. But you know, this wasn't even the game that inspired me to release this video. What truly drove me to the rooftop was Street Fighter 6. So I recently bought Street Fighter 6, a game that I'd already played in the past. I do enjoy it quite a bit and I've been meaning to get good at it, so I decided to buy a copy of it for myself. Now the version that I decided to buy was the years 1 to 2 FighterZ edition, because I thought to myself, well fuck, a bundled version of the game that comes with both season passes, sign me up. Now, to give you some additional context, in 2017, Bandai Namco decided to release Naruto Storm 4 Road to Boruto, a newer release of Storm 4 that came included with the base game, the previous season pass, and the new Road to Boruto expansion, all included in the disc. In fact, this used to be very normal, releasing special editions of fighting games that was more balanced and had an extra character or two, which to me always felt like a reasonable compromise for adopting the DLC business model. Over the course of the game's run, you can release as many DLC content as you want, but at some point in the future, you had to re-release the game with all the DLC included, and maybe even some extra content that hadn't been released before to give existing buyers an excuse to basically buy the game again. But I guess Capcom had a different idea. First of all, the build of the game that comes shipped in the disc isn't even an up-to-date one. It's the version 1.0 build that Bear in mind, it's not patched to even include the newer characters from the later DLCs. So if you want to play them, you have to download a bloated update shitting all over your hitting storage space. But beyond that, the season pass content doesn't even come shipped in the disc. It's a fucking serial code that you have to redeem on the PlayStation Store. Like, why? You know, as much as I complain when video game companies release Ultimate Editions that include the DLC content in a piece of paper, I can at least understand that. It's stupid, but whatever, I get it. You don't want to ship out different disc copies during your premiere, you want to streamline your physical releases, billion-dollar companies need to save costs by minimizing the SKUs, I understand it. But Capcom, it's been 2 years since you released Street Fighter 6. You really couldn't have just printed a new disc as a good gesture to celebrate the success of this release? Your game made millions of dollars and you somehow managed to come off as a fucking cheap ass. It's such a shame because it's a good game and the original release actually does have a pretty decent physical version. It gives you the option to either include or exclude certain modes that you may not be interested in installing right away, either because you don't care or you want to save the installation time for later in order to save time and storage space. But this year's 1-2 FighterZ edition is honestly pretty disappointing. A part of me kinda regrets buying this because had I known that the physical release of this edition would be this fucking pathetic, I probably would have just bought the base version and stuck with that, because in my eyes I'm getting the exact same product, except one comes with an extra napkin to wipe the vomit out of my mouth and also happens to have a code for a piece of content that will be taken away from me if either my account gets disabled or if the PSN service gets shut down. Brought to you by Modern Gaming. Anyway, please consider signing the EU initiative and the UK petition for Stop Killing Games, because we sure as fuck can't expect the publishers to do their due diligence of providing some semblance of ownership for their consumers. And that's all I have to share. Take care.